Hello and welcome everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about a very interesting question, and that is whether anyone can complete their PhD in just 1 year. So it's a more of a debate than a suggestion that you should aim to complete a PhD in 1 year. But what I want to do with this uh, question, by raising this question, is to find out what actually causes delays during PhD and what is it that you can do to try to finish your PhD in the least amount of time. And the least amount of time could be 1 year, could be 1.5. It depends. So that is the objective of today's session, to to debate on this question. All right, so this is what I have for you today. Is it possible to finish a PhD in 1 year? Okay, that's the question. So what we're going to learn today is, can you finish your PhD in 1 year? What causes delays during your PhD? What are some things that you can control and those things that you cannot control? And how can you speed up these delays so that you finish your PhD as quickly as possible? All right. So to answer that, let's start with an easy answer first. And the easy answer is, completing a PhD in 1 year is exceptionally challenging, if not improbable, due to the extensive amount of work that is typically required. Yeah, so extensive amount of work is required, but you can always manage your work accordingly. All those things that are under your control, you can finish them at a speed much higher than others probably will do. PhD programs normally take anywhere between 3 to 7 years, and this is considering part-time students as well, to complete, depending upon the field of study. However, if you are determined to finish PhD as quickly as possible, I'll give you some strategies, that might help you to accelerate this process, though completing it within 1 year remains highly unlikely. Yeah, so this is a response that I have got from ChatGPT when I asked this question. But I want to challenge that. Yeah, and the reason I want to challenge is, there are many things that seemed impossible before, but they became possible in the future. So let's look at some of the examples from history where individuals and teams achieved something that was considered impossible during those stages. Yeah, during that time. One example is aeroplane, right? The human flight. This was made possible by Wright brothers in 1903. Against all the skepticism of leading scientists and engineers who claimed heavier than air flight was impossible. Yeah, impossible. Orville and Wilbur Wright built and successfully flew the first aeroplane, changing the course of human transportation and warfare. Yeah, so something that was impossible was made possible by someone. Similarly, landing on the moon, the Apollo 11 mission first landed humans on the moon. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were there. The achievement was realized in the face of enormous technical challenges and widespread public skepticism about the feasibility. People were just not ready to believe that something like this is possible. So, many a times there are examples where things seem impossible just because somebody has not done it yet. And even if you are debating about the speed of a PhD, it may be that you may be the one who are going to break that record and finish your PhD in a decent amount of time. Could be 1 year as well. So rather than the questioning, can you finish your PhD in 1 year? Let's reframe the question by adding the word how. Yeah. How can you finish your PhD in 1 year is the question that we need to ask. And to do that, you need a change in your mindset. Yeah, you need a change in your mindset, because mindset is the key. Yeah, mindset is the key for your success. See, you need to believe that you can, And you need to find out how you can make that possible, right? So remember, we are trying to rephrase the question from can you finish the PhD to in 1 year to how can you finish your PhD in 1 year, right? If I were to give you this as a target and uh, ask you to do that, you may figure out a way to do it. Yeah. See, the mindset is something that has been told to us for a long period of time. Because PhD typically takes 3 to 7 years, we just assume that we need to spend that much time doing PhD, right? But that need not be the case, right? If just imagine if PhD was supposed to be only 2 years and you could finish it in a year and a half. It is possible because it is a frame of your mind. What do you think, or what others believe you make you believe of what is possible, right? So I had one PhD student who kind of finished most of his work for his PhD in 1.5 years, right? However, he could not submit his thesis because the minimum guidelines were that you should be enrolled for 2.5 years in your PhD. So it is possible if you have the right guidance, right time. But whether you want to do it or not, whether you want to put yourself to so much stress or not, is a different question. But if you want to do it, how could you do it is what we need to see. So to answer this how, let's explore some options, right? What is it that we can do to reduce the time required to complete your PhD, right? So one is to select a practical research topic which has a narrow scope. Yeah, that is, which means you know exactly what you're going to do. A topic that requires less preliminary research, has readily available data, and fewer variables could potentially be completed faster. So we're trying to figure out what are the things that you can do to simplify your completion. The second approach is to build up on your previous work. So if you have master's thesis or a professional project that you have completed, you could extend that to a PhD, and that will take significantly less amount of time because a majority of the things would have been completed before, right? You would know the literature completely in and out. You know the problem that you need to address. You also have understanding of the overall area of your research, right? So it can become fairly easy that way. Next thing is you need to have full-time commitment, right? Reduce all your other commitments so that you can fully focus on your PhD, and you can progress to the best possible speed. Another thing is to ensure that you have sufficient funding during your PhD program so that you do not focus divert your attention to doing some part-time work, which is what I often see. Students get distracted with earning money and then they delay their PhD, and not realizing that the small money that you can make while you are doing your PhD, you are losing the big money that will come after you finish your PhD. When you get a full-time job or start working, the salary, imagine the salary that you that you would lose if you delay your PhD by half a year. Yeah, if the average salary is say $150,000 or $120,000, you're losing $60,000. So understand the time value of money. Try to finish your PhD in a reasonable amount of time. The other thing that you would need is an intensive advisor or supervisor support. So you need to be comfortable working with a supervisor who provides you uh, timely guidance, feedback, and is equally passionate about completing the research as you are. Yeah, and you make sure that you have regular scheduled meetings and a proper detailed plan that you want to execute. All right, next thing where normally takes time is in data collection, right? So if you have existing data that you can use, that cuts down your time significantly, right? And if you can streamline your experiments or design experiments that are simple but effective, yeah, they have to be simple but not non-innovative, right? They have to be innovative. They have to have clear objectives, clear controls, but you make sure that you have thought about it so that you know that the moment you get the required data, you can start your experiments. Then you have to have a very detailed plan, like I said, and set deadlines. So if you are planning 12 months Yeah, so that is 52 weeks. You need to have literally 5-day weekly plan of what you want to achieve. And maybe this is what you spend more time on developing this plan and get feedback from your supervisor on the possibility or feasibility of that plan. Right? Next is writing and revision. Write as you go. You don't think that you will write at the very end. That doesn't work very well because you forget a lot of things. Yeah. So while you're reading papers, while you're doing your experiments, start writing then and there. It is very, very smart way of doing this, and seek feedback early. Yeah. Make sure that you get feedback from your supervisor, your mentors, your peers, whoever is going to help you out. A plan in advance who is going to proofread your thesis before submission, because that also takes time. And while you're doing all this, ensure that your research meets all the necessary ethical guidelines. If you have to apply for ethics approval, keep that in mind and start the process very earlier on. Because you want to do things in parallel, because you don't want to be just sitting there waiting that something has to happen, only then you can progress further. Right? So you have to manage that activities and time properly. Okay. So the summary here is achieving a PhD in such a short frame, even with these strategies, would be highly unusual. Yeah. And would require exceptional circumstances and resources. So it doesn't mean that you cannot do, but it is highly unusual, but you can always prove it wrong. Typically, a more realistic goal would be to complete the program in the least amount of time. Yeah, so like I told you, one of my students completed all of his work literally in a year and a half. Yeah, so you can keep that as as a target. So next, what I want to discuss is what takes the most time when doing a PhD, and what can I do to reduce that time. So if you have an understanding of this bit, you will know where is the most you're going to waste the most amount of time, and you can plan some strategies around it. So first is research and data collection. What happens is developing the research question, designing experiments, collecting data can be exceedingly time consuming, especially in fields like biology, chemistry, or social sciences, right? Where experimental and longitudinal studies are required. So in this case, it will not be possible to do a PhD faster because longitudinal study requires time. Yeah. But in say management or in computer science, where you are in control of the work, for example, in computer science, if you have to develop a new algorithm, you are in complete control yourself, right? You don't have to wait on anything. There is no data collection. Yeah, you develop an algorithm, test it on an existing data set, get your results, and done. You do 2 or 3 algorithms and you will be more or less done with your PhD. So what can you do in this scenario to reduce time? You could use pre-existing data. That is one thing. You could narrow your focus. So limit the scope of your research question to something more specific and manageable, but still worth a PhD. Yeah. And you could choose efficient methods. Efficient methods to conduct your research. Yeah, so you could choose methods that are not only effective, but also time efficient. So depending upon your research field, you could get advice from your supervisor on what these methods could be. Right. Next bit is literature review. Conducting an extensive review of all relevant literature to ensure a comprehensive understanding can take substantial amount of time. Right. What you could do is you can do a focused review if you are already familiar with your topic, and you can use software tools like Zotero and EndNote. But now even more powerful is ChatGPT or other AI tools, right? So this thing is going to speed up amazingly. The amount of time you would need to kind of do your literature review or to analyze your data is going to reduce significantly with the use of AI, right? And I have shown you in the earlier videos of how you can do the whole data analysis or thematic mapping, for example, in qualitative analysis using AI. So keep in mind that you have to have access to different new technologies to help you speed up your work. Writing dissertation, this takes time And which is why I suggested that earlier you should make sure that you are writing as you are researching. Yeah, so if you do that, you will progress as you are uh, as you um, as you do your research, rather than after your research you will start writing and you will always forget a lot of things. And I remember one of my students, she published over 20 articles during her PhD, and that is what she used to do. She used to just consistently write whatever she was researching, and the pace with which she completed her PhD was also just phenomenal. Okay, write regularly. Start writing from the beginning of your PhD program. Get regular feedback to help catch issues. Join some writing workshops if you think your writing is a bit challenging, or you can use AI to help you improve your English or improve your writing skills. Another bit where it takes time is revisions. Yeah, so you may be pretty fast at working the changes, but you have to wait for either your supervisor to come back to you, or if you have submitted a paper for a journal, for them to review and get back to you. So keep that in mind. These things are beyond your control, so you cannot speed them up, but whatever is in your control, you can make sure that you make it as fast as possible. Okay, what you can also do is to have clear communication with your supervisor to ensure the expectations are set clearly, that if I submit you for something feedback, you should get back to me in a week's time or 2 weeks time at most, so that accordingly that you can be able to plan your timeline. Submitting chapters as they are completed can help spread out the revision process over time and identify issues early. So this is one option if you are going to go the traditional way of thesis, which is by writing a full thesis. These days, you can also write your thesis as a publication. So if you publish 3 or 4 articles, those can be combined together to make into a thesis. So which means it saves you like 3 or 4 months of time, which typically is spent on writing a thesis. Yeah. So these things you need to know to see or to figure out how you can manage or how you can control your time. What the worst thing that can happen in this is your experiments fail. Yeah. And that not only has a toll on the time it has taken to do the experiments, but it will also have some emotional toll as well on you. You will be maybe disheartened, unhappy, and you would have to start all over it or start it all over again. So do keep that in mind, that these things can happen, and to make sure that these things doesn't happen, or the like a backup in to make sure that this thing does not occur with you, you have to have a potential risk management in place. What is it that you can do if something goes wrong, because things will go wrong. Yeah. And you need to have a plan, because sometimes, for example, once one student came to me and said that I was doing this research, I was developing this algorithm, and I found somebody has already published something similar. What can I do? See, these things can happen. So you need to be able to be very agile and leave what has happened and just continue on forward. And in this case, we had to identify how we can further improve that algorithm. So we identified other factors, tested it on other extensive data, did more experiments, and then proved that we can still get it published. Yep, ethical approvals and compliance. I told you earlier as well that it takes time. So make sure that you are ready, you are prepared for those things. Okay, so what my concluding remarks are that if you are considering to finish your PhD in a short amount of time, you have to ensure that you have to plan very properly. You need to have experience in doing research. So if you have a MPhil, or you have done a fair bit of research during a master's program, you should be able to get the good, it would be possible for you to complete your research faster. Yeah. So don't just aim that I want to finish it in 1 year, but plan it in a way that even if you aim for 1 year and if it takes 1.5 years, that's perfectly fine. Yeah, because what we also need is that the research has to be equally good quality. Yeah. But what I have seen on many occasions is students, because they know that PhD is minimum 3 years, they just take it for granted that they will have enough time to do it later, and the first year just goes like that without much effort. The next half year also just goes by, and then they suddenly realize the gravity of the situation, that only 1.5 year is left for me to complete my PhD. What should I do? I should start working now. So, and then they do, and then they start working in the remaining 18 months, and they finish their PhD. So what I'm trying to say is that urgency that comes halfway through your PhD, if you start it at the very beginning, imagine that when you start your PhD, you're already thinking that, oh wow, I have already finished 1.5 year, I only have 1.5 year left. What can I do? Keep that in mind and do your PhD. So I think by doing that way, you will be in a better position to plan your work accordingly, plan your work very properly. Yeah. And always remember that you need to seek advice from your supervisor for sure, but also other maybe PhD students who are senior to you, or anyone who you think can add value, your mentor, and listen to them, especially if they have experience in this space, right? So if you're doing a PhD, talk to somebody who has already completed a PhD. And on many occasions, when you will ask people who have completed their PhD, if they were to do the PhD again, how long would it take? Maybe just give that a try. Ask people what they think, and they will say, oh, half the time or even less than that. That is what you need to believe. That for example, if you go back to the exam scenario, right? When you were a kid, or when you start learning how to ride a bicycle or walking, for example, at that time it felt very hard and very daunting, right? Oh, how can I walk? I've always been crawling. Or how can I ride a bicycle? I have always walked. But after you put the time to learn the skill, you can do it easily. And then if somebody asks you, can you do it? How long would it take you to do it again if you would had to do it? And you would say much less time than that. So same thing applies to PhD. So go and talk to people who have completed their PhD and ask them, what is it that I can do to speed it up? Give me all your suggestions, ideas, thoughts that you have, so that I can speed up my PhD and finish it faster. Doesn't have to be in 1 year, but don't let that thing delay you, that because it takes 3 years for everyone, it will also take me 3 years. It doesn't have to be like that. Yeah. So I'll go back to my topic point again, which I made, which was mindset. Yeah, you need to change your mindset. You need to think that PhD is doable in less than 3 years. If it is not 1 year, doesn't matter. But it doesn't have to be more than 3 years. It doesn't have to be 4 years. As long as you know the problem that you're going to do, you know how you're going to solve it, PhD just becomes a project, and you have to manage that project accordingly. So you need to be very good at project management. So even before starting your PhD, I would suggest taking on some lessons on project management, how to manage your PhD as a project, and do that. And I think you will realize that it is much easier when you have a proper plan to completing your PhD. All right, on that note, that's all in today's session. I hope if you're struggling with finishing your PhD, that this will give you some guidance, some direction on completing your work. And what I also think is that you need to be confident in your ability, in your capability, that you can do it. So I want to show you one thing before we close the session. Is look at my channel here, and if you scroll down, you will see there is a PhD planning and success videos, year 1, year 2, year 3, what all you can do, plan your PhD. If you go through these, it will give you enough guidance on what you could do to speed up your PhD or plan it properly. So take time to go through these videos, and hopefully your research will be faster and you will be finishing your PhD very soon. All right, Thank you very much and have a good day. Bye bye.